Good morning, everyone. We get started as usual with a little bit of a meditation to get us going. And we're going to pull from a quote by Beethoven. And he says, "One must not hold oneself so divine as to be unwillingly, occasionally, to make improvements in one's creation." Again, one must not hold one's self so divine as to be unwillingly or unwilling occasionally to make improvements in one's creation. And if you see right here, this is a painting that actually it's a beautiful painting that denotes or shows, I should say, creation and artistic. I don't know if you can see it, but there's some writing right above my head. This is all just writing here, and that's the entire story of Genesis in Hebrew. It's a beautiful painting that I have in my living room, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today because we're moving on in our Mishnah to the next chapter, which just does discuss creation. But what Beethoven is talking about is pretty amazing. That's so divine, meaning that God created the earth and set it in motion, and it doesn't seem in the divine story, in the story at least in our Torah, that God is going back and making improvements. And so what Beethoven is saying, we're not like that. We don't need to have that perfect attitude towards our creations. We create often. We create all the time, not just artistically speaking, but we're constantly creating things. We're constantly creating in our life on a daily basis. And to go back and say, what could I do better? What did I do well? And how can I improve upon it is a human endeavor, and one in which we should all look to. There is nothing so perfect, whether it's writing or some kind of art that you're doing, or some other creative or other creation, or something in your work, or something that you're building, or something that you're doing. We're all in actively building something in our lives. And to go back and review that is the most important part of the human endeavor. And so, wanted to start with that. Good morning to you all. And we're going to look at this Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Let's look at the beginning of Mishnah, the Pirkei Avot, chapter 5, Mishnah 1. That's where we're starting today. We're moving right along. There's 6 chapters. We're in the 5th. We've already gone through 4. And it starts off. And this needs a little bit of an explanation because it may seem um, not necessarily obvious. And it says, with 10 utterances, the world was created. 10 utterances, meaning in the Hebrew is amarot. With 10 of these sayings, 10 sayings, the world was created. But the Hebrew word for saying is amar. And so there are 9 times in the creation story. Remember, in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth, and so on and so forth. 9 times it says the word Amar, and God said, "Let there be light," and God said, right? So it says that 9 times, 9 times. And then you get 10 from Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning, God created the earth, or the heavens and the earth. That creates 10 times in which God spoke, or God Amar said something, and then the world was created. And so that's where they get this, with 10 utterances the world was created. And the commentaries get into what does this really mean, but I want to look at it from the perspective of creation. And we are constantly creation. There's a reason why I read that Beethoven quote, is because we are constantly creating. So one of the questions you can ask is, what are you building right now? Part of our task as people, as human beings, isn't just to sit around and watch Netflix all day, although that might be a great alternative during this pandemic. It's not to look at our phones all day. It's not to just sit at home. It's to create. Remember that man was created, or humans were created, to get out there and be of service, and to till and to toil and to get to work. And so, what is it that you're creating right now? Look at your life, and if you're between creations, if you're between building something, you're taking a moment. What is it that you're thinking about that you'd like to build? We're constantly having those thoughts. I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. Well, it doesn't come from anywhere and nowhere. Much of what we create comes from the mind, comes from an idea, comes from some form, something happening in your mind, and then oftentimes what you'll put it on paper, you'll commit it to something, and then you act on it. Those are some of the ways in which we create. Well, that's precisely what has happened here with 10 utterances. God says, and then he acts, right? So it became in the mind of God, and then God acted. So with these 10 utterances, right, it's not isolated. It takes creation, takes time, it takes effort, it takes moments of clarity with building upon what we have already created. It's not just one isolated incident. But so, what do you think? Interestingly enough, what would be the first response? So, when with 10 utterances the world was created, what does this come to teach? What do we learn from this idea? What do we learn from 10 utterances? You have to learn something from it. It's not just a statement that is just floating there. We have to take something from it. Indeed, could it not have been created with one utterance? So the first question right off the bat is that, why do you need 10 if God is God? Couldn't God have just said, boom, let me just create this and be done with it? And so here it says, and this is an interesting take, this was to exact punishment from the wicked who destroyed the world that was created with 10 utterances, and to bestow goodly reward upon the righteous who sustain the world that was created by the 10 utterances. And so, are you someone who is building, or are you somebody who is destroying? So right off the bat, it's asking us a moral and ethical question, that the reason it was created in these 10 utterances, and not just one, was to see how it is that you are building. How is it that you are building or destroying? It doesn't take just one moment in which you create something. It takes a series of moments to build and to build and to build. Right? Just take any building, or take any organization that you can think of. It didn't happen overnight, did it? It took a very, very long time. Now, there's the great statement, right, that it takes years to create something and just moments to destroy it. But here it's also saying on the other is that the destructive thing takes time and time and time to do that as well. To bring something down. Look, you don't, if you want to make it on a personal thing, to lift yourself up and to build yourself well, mentally, physically, spiritually, it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. You want to get healthy, you want to get in shape. It's not going to happen with just one moment. It's going to take days and weeks and years of dedication and commitment. You want to learn something, truly learn something, it's going to take months and months of effort to really build that. It's also true with our destructive forces. If you wake up on a daily basis with negative thoughts, or you make choices when you wake up in the morning not to build and not to create a life for yourself, it will take time, but you will get to a mental space of defeated mental space, a place of depression, anxiety, these kinds of things. It doesn't happen overnight. You can look back at your life and see how you have built one way or you have built the other way. And so this is what we're looking at right now. The creation. How is it that you how is it that you are creating on a daily basis? How is it that you are destroying on a daily basis? Obviously, we want to build. So, what are the things that we can do to create just incremental, small incremental movements each day to continue to build? Because what are we building? We're building a better life. We're building a better community. We're building a place in which people can grow and develop. Isn't that ultimately what we want? The assumption is that's what you want, and if that's not what you want, then that's a different question. Mishnah 2. Mishnah 2. There there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. So here's the theme is 10. And I don't want to get into all of the reasons that's 10, but these are perfect numbers to remember. Remember that I said Amarot, the God stated, Amar stated, it was only stated 9 times, and then they add the Bereshit bara Elohim to give you 10. 10 is a great number to help us remember things as we move forward, right? Much of what the Mishnah is laid out is so that we can commit it to memory, so that we can commit it to memory. And if we know that the series of 10 things will help us to remember, because for the rabbis or for this particular Mishnah, this is extremely important, right? This idea of building, this idea of creation. And now we're going to look at what's the reason for the 10 generations from Adam to Noah. Of course, Adam Hakadmon is the first person, according to the story of Breshit, which again is written right here. I like this. I like having this right here. I think it's a lot of fun. Again, it's a beautiful painting that my wife got. And you know what? Here we go. Just real quick, you can see, if you look closely, um, the Hebrew letters as it's written throughout the entire. That was a little weird. Sorry about that, but I think it's just a beautiful painting, and so all of those words is the entire creation story written out, and it looks like that's what creation, or at least the artistic, the artist's understanding of it. And figured I'd share that again with you. But remember the story of Noah, right? 10 generations. If you go back into the Torah and read 10 generations from Adam, the first person, or the first, we don't need to get into whether or not evolution and all that, but Adam, of course, would be the first person that we understand. And then 10 generations, you get to Noach. And of course, Noach is the generation of the great flood. So let's look at this. There were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. Count them. You'll see that. And to show the degree of his patience. What does this mean? What does the patience mean? Remember, right out of the gate, Adam has 2 kids, Cain and Abel. What does Cain do? Cain kills Abel, right? Do you think, right, if you had created, or let's say God is a parent figure, right, looking down at God's kids, and he sees that the very first thing that they do is murder, right? And so this is a commentary on God's perspective, and for all these generations angered him increasingly. So from murder, right, he gets more and more upset looking at what his kids are doing, more and more upset, until he brought upon them the water of the flood. And so what's the point? 10 generations. That's a very, very long time. The principle here that we are to take away from is the importance of patience, right? For all of the anger, God was becoming more and more angry, and he had great patience before the episode of the flood. So what did we learn? Creation is to teach us about building and what we ought to build. And then, of course, the 10 generations to the flood are to teach us about great patience. So let's learn one more. There were 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. Okay, so of course, Abraham Avinu, we have Noach, the flood, the generation of the flood, and then of course Abraham Avinu, the first of our forefathers, right? So he leaves Ur Kasdim and Lech Lecha. He starts a whole new life, leaving what was, and then begins this whole new life. And again, it says to show his degree of patience for all those generations him angered him increasingly, until our forefather came and received the reward of them all. So it's continuing this theme of patience, that, for presumably for God, right? These 20 generations or 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and then 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. God is watching all of these things play out. And as a parent figure, watching these things play out, what must the interaction be between well, not the interaction, but what must God's perspective be, I should say, watching all of these things occur? Was God upset? Was God tired, losing patience? They say no, he wasn't losing patience. He was waiting for the moment in which God's children will thrive. So if we look at it not through the span of a generation after generation, but we look at it through the span of a parent and the child, that we ought to have great patience, and that at some point, right, we will be able to see the fruit of our labor, the fruit, remember what we were talking about, of our creation. What was the purpose of our creation? And it may not happen in our timeline, it may not happen as quickly as we want, but we as a parent should, and parent, not necessarily just a parent, but also as an individual watching things play out, we should always have great patience. That we are constantly creating as individuals, right? That's what we learned before. We're constantly creating. What are you creating? And have great patience. Have great patience for that creation to shine. What a beautiful, beautiful message. Because too often, number one, are we creating? Too often we aren't creating. Too often we are bringing down. But when we do create, and that is the ideal, is to create, have great patience in your creations. Have great patience in what you are trying to build in your life. And there will become a point in which the fruit of your labors will show. And what's always important, at least for the Jewish tradition, it's not always necessarily that what you are creating as an individual, the concern isn't necessarily for you to reap the benefits. It is about the generations to come. That is the power of community. That's really the power of our Jewish faith, is one that is not concerned so much with what are the benefits that you get out of your labor and your creations right now, but what happens in the generation to come. What will happen for our children and our children's children. We create for that. A lot is happening right now politically regarding Israel and some relationships that are developing between the United Arab Emirates and, of course, Israel. Yes, there will be benefits today, but the idea for this is for the generations to come. That the possibility to build something, it doesn't matter where you sit politically. We all agree that if you're building towards something positive, it's not just for us right now, it's for those who are to come. I want to wish you a wonderful day, and we will pick up tomorrow with Mishnah. Where are we at? We're already on Mishnah 4, moving right along. Have a great day.